We're up here on top of Mount Marcy, just waiting for the sun to rise. Day 2 of the Northville-Placid Trail is in the books. Well, life doesn't get much better than this open ridge walk on Jay Mountain, and we're at the summit of Lower Wolfjaw, our 8th high peak of the day here on the Great Range Traverse. Well, it's 4:30 a.m., heading a big slide today, and it's -4 degrees here at the parking lot. Bushwhacking our way up Green Mountain, and I have to say, the trees are winning this fight today. Well, the sun is shining and the wind is whipping here up on Haystack. Next stop, Saddleback Cliffs. Cock-a-doodle-doo from the summit of Rooster Comb. Scarface might be the most underrated hike in the entire park. 60-mile-an-hour winds up on Hurricane. Very fitting, cruising up the Bald Rock slab here on Bald Mountain. Standing up here on the summit of Catamount Mountain, Iroquois, Mount Van Hovenberg, Skylight, Santanoni. You're listening to the 46 of 46 podcast. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to the 46 of 46 podcast, now second annual New Year's sessions right here on the podcast. Last year, I did a little recap episode at New Year's, going back through the entire year's episodes and giving some behind-the-scenes facts and just touching on all of the episodes that I did that year, which was met with a lot of applause because now you get a little sneak peek at all the episodes you may have missed if you're new to the show or reminded of other episodes, and you can go back and take a listen. But yeah, we're just here to dish tonight here on the 46 of 46 podcast. It's just me and the microphone going back through the year and everything that was 46 of 46. First off, thank you to everyone who has been with me from the beginning or been with me for 1 week. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy lives to listen to my humble podcast that I record here in the basement of my house or in the front seat of my car, depending what type of episode I'm doing. But anyways, I really do appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. It was a big year. I know I didn't get to do nearly as many episodes as I did in 2020. You can all understand probably why that was the deal. 2020 had there was a lot of time, let's say, to do a lot of episodes week by week. But I still was able to pump out basically an episode every other week, so I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I have plenty of ideas for new material here in 2022. Hopefully time will allow so I can get to that. But the show must go on, and that is what we will do. So, on top of that, I also wrote a book this year in the fall, end of summer and most of the fall is when I was working on that. So that also took up a lot of time. So if you are familiar with that book and you picked it up, thank you as well so much. I appreciate it greatly. And if you're not, it is called From 1 to 46, A Complete Guide to Climbing the 46 High Peaks. And you can pick that up. It is an ebook. You can pick it up on 46of46.com if you're interested in that sort of thing. So that was an exciting part of the year, but let's get right into it. Back on January 15th was the first episode of the season, first episode of 2021, and it was the mighty McNaughton Mountain, the 47th high peak. Now, this was a trail episode, and it was a winter hike that I did with Jonathan and a bunch of other people who I met for the first time on that hike with Jonathan Zaharik and a bunch of other people. It was quite the day. Let's put it that way. It started early and it ended late, or at least it felt that way because that's kind of, short time of the year. The days are short, but it was a good time. I had a really good experience in the sense of finally checking off that unofficial 47th high peak. However, the day itself was a bit brutal due to some physical limitations that I felt throughout the hike. But that is a trail episode, and you can listen all about that dang knee that was acting up that I have dealt with on other episodes you may have heard if you've been around for a while. But yeah, that was my experience there. McNaughton Mountain is definitely worth doing if you are, you become a 46er and you want to check that box. I would highly recommend going with someone who has been up it before, possibly hiring a guide to go do that with you. It is definitely unlike anything else in terms of what you'll see in the high peaks. It is a bushwhack up to the summit, so it is not to be taken lightly. But if you do want to do it, pick up a guide, hire someone, find a friend who wants to go for some reason to go to McNaughton again. That should give you a little hint as to, I personally probably wouldn't go up it again, but, some people might, I'd go again, whatever. It's been long enough, I'd go again. But anyways, that was the first episode of the year, episode 80. And this year we did cross the 100 threshold. So for me personally, that was very exciting. But anyways, moving forward, episode 81, the Summit Sessions number 22. First time in the Adirondacks with Paul Fuzinski from Aptitude Outdoors. Paul has become basically one of my best friends over the last couple of years. We've bonded pretty well because we're basically the same person. And we have outdoors podcasts. Paul's from Ohio. We're both into production, video production, and that sort of thing. We're both, he currently is and I was in a metal band for a long time. So we just have a lot in common. But this was Paul's first time in the Adirondacks. He came up, and he's from Ohio. And you may not know this, but there's not many mountains in Ohio. In fact, there aren't any mountains. So, it was a really cool experience getting to be with him and be with anybody, really, when they come to the ADK for the very first time. And this was in the winter, too. When he came up. So it was also his first time hiking a mountain in the winter, which was really exciting. And I was so like stressed because he came up, he did this big long like circle of the country. So he had a little road trip type of action. He went down to North Carolina and did some like mountain biking and stuff. Then he drove all the way up to Lake Placid and then back to Ohio. So there was a lot of miles there, and when he was driving up, the weather was terrible. Oh, it was like, oh no, he's going to come up here. It's a terrible time to be up here weather-wise. So I was stressing, but I took him up Mount Joe. That was a good time. But of course, there was like, I'd give the views 40%. So I was like embarrassed and kept apologizing for, I'm so sorry, there's nothing to see, blah, blah, blah. But he was so stoked anyways and so excited. And then the next day I took him up Hurricane Mountain because if you're only going to hike one mountain here in the ADK, I always send people to Hurricane. I think it has everything that you could want in a package that's like medium size, that I would say. And at various points throughout that day, the clouds cleared and he got to see some big mountain views. And then, of course, the clouds came back in and then we got snow. So he actually had a pretty good winter hiking experience altogether, fortunately. But I was super stressed when he came up because I just wanted to make sure it was good. Of course, obviously, I have no control over that. So kind of weird to be stressed about it, but that's how it happened. But it was a great time hiking with you, Paul. Appreciate it. Let's do it again. I've also been on Paul's podcast a couple times, and we're going to hear from him later in this very episode. Moving forward, episode 82, Summit Sessions number 23, Hunting and Conservation, Dispelling Misconceptions with Todd Waldron. This was a wild card episode. I had been wanting to do a hunting episode for a while because, as it turns out, a lot of people who listen to my podcast are also hunters. I've found just from people messaging me in conversations and this and that. And I also feel that the hiking and hunting communities actually have quite a bit in common, but they don't even realize it. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to have Todd on the show. Todd's also an Adirondack native who has his own podcast, and it is a hunting podcast called the East West Hunting Podcast. And he's also got another one that he does for another organization. But anyways, I was pretty stoked to have Todd on the show. And he is just a plethora of information. Plethora? Is that the right word? I don't know. I apologize if it's not, but it sounds like, I think it's the right word. But he is just so smart and had so much information about, kind of dispelling misconceptions about hunting, conservation, and the outdoors community as a whole. So I definitely would encourage you to listen to that if you're looking to hear something new and different and possibly change your mind about something you might not be nearly as informed about as you may think you are. Moving forward, episode 83, Bushwhacking Green Mountain, the 45th tallest peak in the Adirondacks. So this was a throwback episode. I did this hike in June that year with Jonathan Zaharik and Kira. We bushwhacked up Green Mountain, but I did the episode in February because I wrote the episode and I had the audio and all that stuff just kind of sat on it for a long time because I just didn't get to finish it. And then in February, I was like, oh, it would be really fun to throw it back to the summertime because it was just one of those weeks where it's just like, man, it's still winter. I need some warmth in my life. So I thought that was fun. And that was a tough mountain. Not terrible. Not terrible of a day. It was a great, sunny, perfect day. I remember that day too. It was the first time I was wearing shorts, so I was super stoked on that because, the first hiking day of the season where I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt, so that was exciting. But yeah, bushwhacking up Green Mountain. Green is thick. Ooh, it is thick. I have some scrapes and scratches on my legs that have scarred over and therefore will be with me for life, including one really big gash that I suffered at the hands of Green Mountain. It is the 45th tallest peak in the Adirondack, so, it's big. It's not a high peak, officially, because many of you know that some of the high peaks are actually below 4,000 feet, as it would turn out. But, this is the 45th tallest peak in the Adirondack. So if you are thinking about hiking Green or have any interest in hearing about a mountain that you're not familiar with, I highly recommend checking out the Bushwhacking Green Mountain episode. Moving forward, episode 84, the ADK Campfire Story series continues with the ghost town of Adirondack. One of my all-time favorite episodes that I've done on the podcast. So I wrote this episode along with somebody else. I had put this post up on Instagram to see if, hey, does anyone else have stories that they want to, write or whatever? And but yeah, her name is Diana Gallagher, and she wrote the story. And her and I kind of storybooked what the story would be, and she pitched this idea. And I was like, yeah, it sounds awesome. Let's go with it. And then we kind of developed it. And, I had a ton of ideas with how to kind of formulate getting from A to B, and she just knocked it out of the park. Diana, you did a fantastic job writing that story and taking all my changes and this and that and just crushing it. And I had a blast editing that because I had this vision. I wanted that episode to be a very Tim Burton-y type of vibe because the story isn't really a scary story. It's more of just a weird ghost town story where the town comes back to life and it's the person kind of wanders into the past. That's what I wanted it to be. And anyways, yeah, to this day, it's still one of my favorite episodes. It's probably a top 5. Definitely my favorite campfire story episode since I've done those. But I really liked that. Diana, great job again. I would, if you were going to listen to any campfire story episode, I think that one's my favorite one. Check it out. Moving forward, one of the most downloaded episodes of the year, and one of the biggest episodes of the year, the Summit Sessions number 24, the new DEC AMR Pilot Reservation System episode. So this was one of those episodes where, as many of you know, the Ausable Club created a new pilot reservation system where you have to make a reservation to park your car and ultimately hike out of their whole property. And I get all into my thoughts on how I feel about the pilot reservation system in that episode. And Jonathan Zaharik came over. He lives in town, so it was pretty easy. Just have him swing on over and let's do an episode about this. But in that episode, we basically go through the press release that they released, so that we're just going line by line about the information that's being given to the public. And you can check that out. But I'm sure many of you are well aware that you now have to make a reservation at the AMR to park there and ultimately hike there, which I don't agree with. But anyways, you could listen to that all in that episode. But yeah, that was actually, surprisingly, it was a very highly downloaded episode, which I was quite shocked about. Moving forward, I started a whole new series here on the podcast called the Summit Sessions Spotlight. And in this episode, the first one of the series, it was New Jersey's 1,000-Foot Peaks with Brian Schultes, episode number 86. So,